Hi everyone, nice to see you all at the portrait workshop. I've spent the day preparing 2 short videos all about basic processing specifically for portrait photography. One thing that I need to say is I use a Mac, so if I say I'm holding down the Command key, it's usually Control on a PC. So the first video that you're going to see features Kes. So I'm going to start off doing some work on Kes's image from last night, because we're going to do slightly more complicated on Nick's, but let's get going with Kes first. So this is the straight from camera image that I took of Kes last night, and the first thing I always do is Command J to make a duplicate layer before I do anything. So if I make a dreadful mistake on that layer, I can simply drag it to the bin and my original one is there waiting for me. So the first thing I'm going to say, some cameras need a little bit of help with sharpening. So the way that I would do that is I go up to filter, down to camera raw, and then just go to detail here, and under sharpening just type 20% in there and OK. Now if I zoom in, you'll see my Sony camera doesn't actually need sharpening the picture, but it just very slightly sharpens it if you think your camera needs that. And then you can just flatten those 2 images together, and you go up to layer and down to flatten images. I never do more than 20%, because what you can find happens is your image ends up looking just over sharpened, and judges hate over sharpened images. So the next thing we're going to do is a copy layer again. That's Command J on a Mac, because I do use a Mac, and there's my copy layer. And what I do on this one is I work quite closely and I get rid of any little bits of spots on the skin, bits of showing on the cloak that you might not want. So just have a really good look round. So we'll work on Kes's face. Most women like to get rid of just the odd thing. So what I do is I go over here, and spot healing is a nice little tool for doing this. Like a stray hair here, just draw over it and the stray hair disappears. A little bit more there so you can see what I'm doing. And then I don't like to make Kes or any other woman look very plasticky and Americanized, but you know, just get rid of the odd little bits that you think, oh, she'd hate that. I'm just going over the whole image, just getting rid of some slight little blemishes. I bet she'll like to get rid of some of those wrinkles there, Kes. I'm sure you'll laugh when you see this. And maybe there. And I'll zoom out and just check that there's nothing on the cloak. No, that's fine. And I'll zoom back out again. I think that's all I want to do to her. I want her to look very natural in this picture. But obviously it's up to you. If you want to take more out, you can. I've just noticed, I'll just zoom in slightly on her chest. The problem with a Sony camera is it picks up absolutely every little blemish in the skin. So I'll just smooth that out slightly here. There we are. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. So once again, I'm going to up to layer and flatten the images. And again, Command J to do a duplicate image, because we're going to do some more work on it now. So what I'm going to do is that the brightest part of this image should be her face, but the flowers here and here I think are just slightly too bright, and little bits in her hair. So I'm going over here to the burn tool. I'm putting it on mid-tones, and about kind of 30% will do. And then I'm zooming in, excuse me, and this little bit of elastic in her hair makes the brush slightly smaller. I'm just going to darken that area down slightly. If I turn that on and off, you can see the difference. It's only a little bit. Inside that flower also, I think. Just keep painting over and over with the burn tool. This area here, again, just going to burn it very slightly. You can just keep closing that eye on and off so you can see the difference. And this flower here, because it's near the light, is definitely too bright. So I'll do quite a lot of burning on that one. And turn this on and off again so that you can see. I think I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to zoom out again so I can see the difference. Yeah, it's definitely better with just that little bit of burning added in. So once again, I'm going up to layer, down to flatten, and I'm going to flatten that image. The next thing I'm going to do is, in a portrait, eyes are really important and they actually need to ping quite a lot. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Again, Command J for a duplicate layer. Zoom in quite close so that it's basically just her eyes that I'm looking at. I'm going here and I'm picking up the lasso tool and I'm basically going to draw around the coloured iris of her eye and then drag it over here and do this one as well. And once I've drawn a pair of spectacles, if you like, round them and the marching ants are going, just do Command J so that you copy that eyes layer onto its own layer. So what I'm going to do now is make sure I'm working on the eye layer, up to filter, down to other, and across to high pass. And when high pass opens, it'll open with this little window, and just type 4 in the radius because 4 is enough. And then OK. So we've got this grey kind of spectacles around her eyes, which is just what we want, but we don't need the middle bit. So I'm just going to use the eraser tool and I'm just going to get rid of that middle bit there because we definitely don't want that to be pinging. And then anywhere else that you think, oh, I just didn't quite draw around perfectly, just get rid of it slightly. There. Okay, so we end up with this. Now this bit might sound scary, but honestly, bear with me, it isn't. What we're going to do is we're going to work on those eyes and we're going to work with blending modes. Can you see here? It says normal. What you need to do is go down all these blending modes, do something slightly different to the eyes and just go down through every one of them slowly till you come across one that you like. Now everybody's eyes are different, so it's normally, for me anyway, pin light, linear light, vivid light or hard light that I use. And can you just see the difference? I think for Kez's eyes we're going to stick with vivid light, and then I let go and look how her eyes are pinging now. Can you see? If I zoom out and I turn those eyes on, look at the difference that it makes. It's really, really good way of making eyes ping in a picture. And again, what we're going to do, up to layer and flatten it again. So there's not an awful lot of stuff that I'm going to do with Kez because I want her to look very natural. I don't want to, as I said before, make her look too Americanized with perfect skin. So the next thing that I'm going to do is just have a close look around the whole image, and I'll zoom out slightly, and I'm kind of quite happy with that, but I want to crop it because there's too much at the top and I don't want all of her from the knees below. So what I'm going to do is go onto the crop tool, and I've got mine set here for portrait 10 by 15, which is what I normally use, and just drag this down till I'm happy with the image. Probably about there, I think, maybe a little bit less, maybe bring it down again and lift it up so that there's not too much boring dress at the bottom of the picture. There, I think that will do. Yeah, happy with that. So I'm just going to tick that, and it's been cropped. Next thing we need to go is into layer and flatten it down again. So the only other thing that I'm going to do with this is put a vignette on, because a vignette will draw your eye more and more into Kez's face. And I've got a really good way of putting a vignette on. Most people paint it in with black, and this is a really good way of doing it. You don't need to do a duplicate layer here. You go up here to the rectangular marquee tool, and you basically draw a frame round your picture. It can be perfect, you know, either side, but I like to do it because her legs at the bottom, I think, could just be darkened down again slightly. So I'm going to do it to about there. Let go, and you've got the line round. Then you go up here to select, and you go down to inverse. And when it inverses it, now you've got a border round your picture of where the vignette is going to be. You go back to select, and you go down to modify, and across and down to feather, and a box will appear. I normally leave 375 pixels in that box because I know that will give a nice feathering to an image this size. And I click OK, and then as you can see, it's feathered the image for you. Now you do Command J of those marching ants to put just that selection on its own layer. If I turn the bottom one off, you can see rather than just black, what it's done is it's selected all the colours in that layer beautifully for you. So make sure you're working on that layer, and go up here to image, down to adjustments and exposure, and now drag the exposure to the left so you're darkening it down. I tend to do it too much, as I've done there, and click OK. If I turn that on and off, you'll see the difference. But it's a little bit too much. It's on its own layer, which is why that's brilliant. Go to opacity and just bring it down to probably around 65–70% till you're happy with the picture, actually. And there we are. It really brings Kez's picture all together. And then all you do at the end is go up to layer and flatten it again. So I've actually got a play here, just so that you can see. I did this earlier. That was the original image that we were working on, and this is what we've done with it now. Just taken the bits of highlights away, added, so it's got nice light on her face, and worked a nice vignette just to finish it all off. This second video features Nick, and once again I've prepared a basic colour image, and then at the end of the movie we're changing that colour image into a really punchy mono image. Okay, here we go with Nick's image. It's basically going to be the same as we start off, but I'm just going to do a couple of little things that are slightly more complicated with Nick, but we'll see. So this again is the straight image from the camera, and the first thing I'm going to do is Command J to do a duplicate image. And again, if you want to sharpen it, you can do as I explained in the Kez image. I'm not going to do it here because, as you can see, his picture is kind of sharp enough, to be honest. And then once you've done that, you can flatten it exactly like you did in Kez. So the next thing we're going to do is work on any little spots or little bits in the image that we don't want, some stray hairs. So I'm going to zoom in. To zoom about. Okay, and again I'm going to go over here and use the spot healing. I don't like that little piece of fluff at the top of the hat, just being me. Now I don't want to take any wrinkles out of men. I want them to look kind of grungy and old. Really sorry about this, Nick, but you're used to me by now. But there are a few things, like I don't like that stray hair there, and I don't particularly like that one. I think all the others are fine, but let's just have a look. That's a bit of fur, but I think it's a bit distracting, so while we're here we'll just get rid of that. Couple of little marks here on his tunic. This in the book was a little slit in the leather, so a piece of leather could wrap it around. I think that's quite distracting because you can't see the fastener, so I'm just going to get rid of that slowly. There we are. I think that looks better. Not sure that there is anything else on Nick actually. No, I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do is go up to layer and down and flatten the image again. Then Command J as usual to do a duplicate layer, and just zoom out slightly so that we can see what we're going to do. Right, because it's a man, we're going to go into Camera Raw. So up to Filter, down to Camera Raw, and we're going to grunge poor Nick up to death. So I'll just move in on his face slightly. I'm in the effects and I'm going to play with texture, clarity and dehaze. Every image you work on will be slightly different, but just whap the texture up, the clarity. Just look at him, don't look at the background at all. Dehaze will just basically darken the background down a bit. I kind of quite like that. How much clarity shall we put on him? Just play about until you're happy with the look that you get, really. Okay, I'm going to leave it on those settings and I'm going to click OK. And now if I turn that top eye on and off, you can see it really has grunged Nick up. But I'm not sure if I like it on the background or not. So we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did on Kez's image. So working on this top layer, just go to Select, down to Select Subject. And it selects Nick and nothing else. Now this is like magic. All you have to do now is go down here to the adjustment layers, and this one here that looks a bit like a washing machine is the mask. And if I click on that, you'll see Nick is now all grunged and the background isn't. Can you see the difference? That's exactly what we wanted, making it now look quite 3D, and he's pinging out of the image. So I like that. So I'm going to go once again to layer and flatten the image, and then Command J to do a duplicate. So we'll work on his eyes now as we did on Kez. So I'm going to zoom in bit more so it's just his eyes I can see, and I'm going to get the lasso tool and I'm going to draw round the coloured iris of his eye, carry on over here till we have the spectacles again. Command J so that those eyes are on their own layer over here. Working on the eye level layer, I'm going up to Filter, down to Other and across to High Pass. It was on 4 last time, it stays on what you typed in before. 4 is enough. If you use more than 4, they tend to look very over sharp and they don't look right. So we're happy with 4. I'm going to get the eraser tool, go in a bit closer, and then I'm going to just get rid of the middle bit because we don't want that to be pinged at all. And as I said, you can just get rid of little bits that you might have copied in error. There we are. That will do. And then again, we're going to play with adjustment layers. Here it starts normally on the normal, and just go down again till you see one that you like. But it's this middle group that I normally use. Pin light, linear, vivid is what we used on Kez, hard light. It's between hard light and linear light. I think I'll stick to linear light here on Nick. And if I turn that on and off again, you can see the difference. These are all really small differences that you can't always see from far off, but they do really make a difference to the finished image. Yeah, happy with that again. So up to the top, layer and flatten. Now what I'm going to do now, rather than burn like we did before, I'm going to use a slightly different technique, but the first thing I'm going to do again is copy layer. Then we're going to use a dodge and burn layer. I use these on everything. They're really good once you get used to them. So you need to go down here and add a new layer to your image and call it dodge and burn, or as I say, D and B. So that's a dodge and burn layer. Working on that layer, if you go up here to edit and then down to fill and let go, you'll get a little box, and here you get lots of different options, but what you want in that box is 100% grey, and you say OK, and it fills that layer with 100% grey colour. That's all it does. But then you go to the blending modes again and go down to overlay. Now it's completely disappeared, you can't see anything, but that's exactly what you want. You're going to work on that dodge and burn layer, come over here to the burn tool again, on mid-tones at, yeah, probably around 13% is fine. And I think if I zoom out, his beard is slightly too bright. So I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to swipe his beard. And if I turn that on and off, can you see it's only a little bit, but I think it's well worth doing. And I want to add a little bit more character to his face. So I'm actually going to burn down this side a little bit as well. You only do it slowly, that's why it's on 13%, just so that you can slowly paint all these things in. And maybe I think the grey tunic is slightly too bright for me, so I'm just going to paint it with the burn tool. Make this a bit bigger for down here and just burn it all down. There. All the way to the bottom of his tunic. And if I turn that dodge and burn layer on and off, you can see it's just tiny little bits, but we want his face to be the brightest thing in this image, so just kind of dull everything else down slightly. A little bit more on his beard maybe. And zoom out again. Yeah, and his hair's slightly whiter there, so I'm just going to dodge that area in. Before we flatten it, we'll just keep looking. Yeah, I like that. He's got more character in his face now, just by shading it in with dodging and burning. So up to layer and flatten the image again. Now if I zoom in on it, I think I'm quite happy with that actually. We don't need to do much more to him, except we need to crop him. So back to the crop tool here, and again mine's on a ratio here of, let's put it on portrait. There we are. So I can bring it down and have a portrait style. I don't need the bit of floor at the bottom, so it's only from his knees up. So that's quite nice, because judges do like the eyes on the thirds. His head is in the middle, so that's in the middle of the picture. That's quite nice. And then normally for that, if I was going to print it and I didn't cut my own mounts, I would say click OK. But you can clear that, and maybe for a DPI, or if you cut your own mounts, you can actually move this now to wherever you'd like it, so it's not constraining the size. And sometimes you can just, I think, get a nicer picture as long as you don't have to stick to the size of your mounts. Yeah, I think about there. I kind of like that. And I'm going to say OK. And then we're going to layer and flatten the image. So OK, again, we've not done an awful lot to this, but we're going to carry on doing some other funky things to him in a minute. So now what we're going to do is put the vignette on as we did before. So here to the rectangular marquee tool, draw your box, and again I like to not put it all the way down to the bottom. I like to bring it up slightly so the bottom of the picture is darkened off. About there will be fine. Select inverse, and now you've got the inverse, so it's got a square round the picture for you where the vignette's going to go, but it's still square looking. So up to select, down to modify, and across to feather again, and 375 is what I normally use. There we are. I like that. I like where it's going to put the vignette, so I'm going to do Command J, so that vignette now is on its own layer. If I turn this off, you can see it, there it is with all the lovely colours, not just black. So working on that vignette layer, we're going Image, down to Adjustments and Exposure, and then we're going to move this to the left and just bring the exposure. As I said, I tend to do it too much, maybe about there, because it's on its own layer, and I can then lower the opacity to around kind of 70. I tend to do it between 60 and 80, to be honest. That's 77. Yeah, I quite like that. There we go. So we're just going to flatten that now. Flatten the layer and save it. And that's it. That's the colour image of Nick done. But what we're going to do is make a mono conversion of this image as well. Because I think men, because you can grunge them up a lot, I kind of quite like the mono versions of them. So we're going to play with him. So I've saved this one as Nick, and I'm going to go up to the top and do Save As, and I'm going to call this one Nick Mono. There we are. So the first thing when you're thinking about doing a mono conversion, basically you need white and black and lots of shades of grey in between. Now, a lot of people make mono conversions and they end up looking dull and flat, and that's because there's not enough colour in them for the mono conversion to work. So you can buy things. I know people were chatting the other day about plugins, and people say Nick is very good. It is. I do have Nick and I sometimes use it, but you don't always have to spend on these expensive things, because the raw converter in Lightroom or Photoshop does a really good job, and that's what I'm going to use to show you. So the first thing we're going to do is a duplicate image again. Now this is going to sound mad. I'll just make it slightly bigger. What we're going to do to this layer is we're going up here to Image, down to Adjustments, and we're going to go to Hue and Saturation, and we're going to saturate this image till basically it looks awful. Now again, every image is different. Sometimes I go to 70%, but this is quite a colourful image, but we'll do it to about 40% and click OK. And then we're going to layer and we're going to flatten it. And it's really colourful and awful, but that's exactly what you need to make a mono conversion, because now instead of quite dull colours in your picture is full of really, really bright colours. So that means that you'll get lots of shades of grey between the black and the white. So what we'll do is a duplicate layer just to make sure, and we're going down here to the adjustments, and I'm going to choose black and white here, and it'll open. It's made a black and white image for you. I think it's a bit flat, so we're going to work on that. But what it also brings up is the colours here that you can play with. So quite often play with red. It can make the skin quite white. So I like to play with a red, and because the curtain at the back is red, you can see it's darkening that down. There's yellow in the skin as well, so sometimes I play with the yellow and bring that. And already I think that looks good. If I turn that on and off, yeah, I like that. And we're going to layer and down to flatten. Now that's kind of good enough, but we can grunge him up some more as we've done before in RAW. So I'm going to do Command J to bring up a duplicate layer, up to RAW, up to Filter, sorry, and then down to RAW, and we'll play again, excuse me, with the textures, clarity and dehaze a little bit. So let's give him some texture, some clarity. I'm just looking at him, I'm not worried about the background. I kind of quite like that actually. The dehaze will darken the background slightly. Yeah, happy with that, so I'm going okay. And what we're going to do is up to select, tell it to select subject, and it selects just him. And again down here, and we're going to put an adjustment mask on, which is this little washing machine symbol, and as if by magic you'll see Nick now pops out of that picture, but it's leaving the background, so he's looking more 3D. And I think that this raw converter does a really good job of that. So I like that. I'm going to layer and I'm going to flatten it. Just before we put a vignette on, because we've done lots of pinging of this picture, I think it's brought back some of the highlights which I'm not so keen on. So I'm going to do a Command J, and just as we did before with a burn tool on mid-tones, I'm just going to very slightly burn his beard and this grey tunic. Just a little bit again. It's sometimes when you're adding layers and layers and doing things to the image and adding brightness or texture, it can kind of make them areas that look slightly too bright again. But I like that. Yeah, that's better. And then we're going again up to layer and flatten. And then lastly, we're going to put a vignette on in the usual way again. Draw it round to about there. Even though we put one on before and it was on this flattened image, it works just to add a little bit again when you convert to mono. So we've selected it and we're going to inverse, up to select again, down to modify and feather. It's kept 375 in there, so we're going to say OK. I like the way it's doing that, so Command J to put the vignette on its own layer, and then up here to image, adjustment and across to exposure. Bring the exposure down a little bit too much because it's on its own layer, and then you can lower the opacity down. I actually quite a little bit less, maybe 70%, because we did put it on the colour image already. There we are. So we've got a really nice image, very clear and sharp. His face is the brightest thing in the image, and we're happy with that. So up to layer, flatten and save. So I'll just go through what I've got at the top here. Here's Nick Mono. And here is Nick Colour. So Nick and Nick. So I hope you enjoyed that and have fun with your processing.